Alright guys, welcome back to Matthew's Ballistics. I was going to wait to do this video, but I'm pretty excited about it. So, let's get into this. You guys know that I love the 454 Casull. It's my favorite handgun cartridge out of any of them. So, have been collecting a couple of different firearms. I have a Raging Judge Magnum, which shoots 454 Casull, 45 long Colt. If you're looking for something a little milder, it shoots also up to 3-inch 410 shells, which is fun, and I think it may have a place, realistically to use, but as far as self-defense or anything like that, I feel like it's pretty limited. I wouldn't trust it for much. Anyways, and then I also have a Rossi Puma lever action 454, which is a very fun gun to shoot. I've shot it at ranges from 100 to 200, even out to 300 yards, and shooting steel at 300 with it is extremely fun to do. So here's a little bit of show and tell. Picked up another 454 Casull. Some of you guys will appreciate. This is a Browning model 1885. Probably one of the strongest actions of any handgun or rifle, firearm, anything that's ever been made. It's a falling block action. It's extremely smooth. It's just glossy smooth. Like, this thing is beautiful. It may have a few fingerprints on it, but I haven't wiped it out or wiped it down and cleaned it since I shot it last. I did shoot it for the first time over the past weekend, and it is chambered in 454 Casull, which is my favorite round, my favorite cartridge. It has a 28-inch octagon heavy barrel. This rifle unloaded weighs 9.8 pounds, so it's about 10 pounds. And it actually makes the 454 cartridge feel fairly mild to shoot, even my hand loads that are really hot. The Rossi that weighs 4.5 pounds shooting my hand loads out of, it hurts. There's no doubt about it. It kicks like a mule. Usually about 10 rounds out of it, and the next day my shoulder's pretty sore. This rifle, I actually shot 50 rounds out of it at the range, and it was fairly comfortable at the end of our range session. So this video is going to be about a pet project that I've been really interested in, really wanting to work on. As you all know, I cast and load just about all of my ammunition. I do buy my hollow points and stuff. I don't cast those. I don't really mess around with defensive ammunition that way. I usually just purchase them, usually in the form of Hornady XTP. It seems to be my favorite hollow point. So, in regards to the 454 Casull, this is my go-to. And I haven't cleaned the excess lubrication off of the liquid L.ong. The last time I lubed these, I used a little bit too much. It happens. But this is my go-to. It is comes from a 300 grain .452 Lee mold. I use linotype always, especially with anything going over 1500 feet per second. No need to overcomplicate it. There's a lot of people that come up with their own special hard alloys and stuff, but I just use straight linotype. It works great. Bullets are very accurate, and they don't come apart. Even hitting steel, they just kind of blunt the tip of them, maybe even halfway back, and just mushroom a little, but they don't break apart really. They end up just coming back in the whole chunk, just shorter when it impacts something hard. These use a gas check, which I think is necessary for the 454 Casull, just for the pure fact that the back of that bullet is receiving upwards of, you know, the maximum pressures are 65,000 psi. Most loaded ammunition, even hand loads, usually operate around at the upper end 55, 60,000 pounds of pressure against it. So that's the bullet that I normally use, and out of a handgun, very good bullet. So you're not planning on really shooting this bullet more than 100 yards or so. So there's no real issue with ballistics and coefficients. You're really not worried about it all that much. This bullet, even at 100 yards, has, God, twice the amount of energy or twice the amount of knockdown power, as they say, as a 44 Magnum does at point blank at 100 yards. This thing is still producing about 1,400 foot-pounds of energy, maybe a little more. And 44 Magnum point blank, you're talking 800-ish, somewhere in there. But when you try to extend the range on this, and this is where this project comes into play. I'm calling this project the ULR 454 Casull, and if you're familiar with what the acronym ULR means as far as, regarding handguns and shooting, or any as far as the shooting sport goes, ULR typically stands for ultra long range. Now, I get that you're not going to be shooting this round at 2,000, 3,000 yards or nothing. So ULR in most of the time means that you're shooting in excess of a mile, 2,000 plus yards. A mile is 1,760. So if you're shooting 2,000 yards or more, you're ULR shooting. I would, in my personal opinion, that is what it is. It's kind of a gray area for, a lot of people. A lot of people have different standards for it, but say you're shooting over 2,000 yards. Now, with a handgun, this bullet loses its supersonic speed. It goes transonic at about 350 yards from the 28-inch barrel. Now, this is because I'm firing it out of this 28-inch barrel, which, by the way, I got some fantastic velocities out of. We averaged with 31.5 grains of H110 over a CCI 400 primer. We seated the bullet down to, I believe, 1770, and super, super consistent. I had an extreme spread of 4 feet per second over 20 rounds of ammunition. That is incredible. I've never had that before. I've not seen that very much before. Maybe it was just a freak thing, but my rounds all came within. The lowest round was 2,080 feet per second, and the highest round was 2,085. So my extreme spread was 5 feet per second. 5 feet per second. So between the slowest and the fastest, coming out of this rifle, the Browning 1885, using my hand loads, it was incredible to me. It's not the most powerful round. I went to 32 grains of powder, and the velocity started getting kind of weird. They started jumping around a little bit. The slowest one was like 2,094 feet per second, and the hottest one, or fastest one, was 2,151 feet per second, which I think could have been a fluke deal, because I only had one other one break 2,100. So giving it that extra half a grain of powder didn't really give me any advantages. It actually made things more erratic, and I would rather have something that's super ultra predictable than to have a round that varies as 50 feet per second between round to round. That's just me personally. So the 31.5 grains seated at that perfect depth yielded a very, very consistent round. So I ended up getting an average of 2,083 feet per second for this. Now, translating that to long range, this bullet right here has a ballistic coefficient, according to Lee, of 0.233, which is not great for long range. You know, out of a typical handgun round that you're not, you know, you don't really think of shooting a big bore handgun round over, say, 100 yards. But if you wanted to really test its limits out of a rifle with a 28-inch barrel chambered in the same cartridge, you could. Now, the problem with this is being that it's got a fairly poor ballistic coefficient for long range. It goes subsonic right around 350 yards. So effectively, that reduces this rifle's effective range down to 350 yards, which there's nothing wrong with that. I personally, as far as hunting rounds and stuff, I'm never going to try to shoot anything with this thing that far out. I don't have a need for it. But for just fun, for just pure interest in like just the, I don't know, the technical side of it, the scientific, like the laws of physics and everything, my brain, the way I think about stuff, I want to dive in. I want to get more out of it. I want to do something better. So I started looking into alternative bullets, alternative bullet profiles, things that were longer, pointer, you know, have a higher ballistic coefficient. And I come across, you know, a few companies that are making bullets for modern muzzleloaders that are, well, not necessarily modern, but these newer muzzleloaders that are using modern gunpowder, smokeless gunpowder, smokeless muzzleloaders. And these guys are shooting 1,200, 1,500 yards with them, and they're on target, extremely accurate, like incredible amount of power output. They're shooting 300 grain bullets at 3,000 feet per second, which is wild. I mean, that is high power rifle stuff, you know, center fire, high power, like 300 Win Mag, 338 Lapua. Like, they're getting up there with those, and technically it's a muzzleloader, though in my opinion a lot of these are modified bolt action rifles, and they've been modified to shoot muzzleloading bullets. Anyways, these bullets that they're using are made by, you know, only a few companies, 3 or 4 companies that are fairly popular. You've got Pittman bullets, you've got Parker bullets, and Alco bullets. Now, when coming up with this idea, I've looked down, I'm like, okay, they've got a 300 grain bullet that has a ballistic coefficient of like 0.4. Okay, well, that's significantly better than mine, which has got a ballistic coefficient of 0.2. The trade-off is that the bullet is much longer. So it's not going to be a bullet that I'm going to be able to chamber and fire in the lever action, and it's probably not going to be a bullet that's going to stabilize well shooting out of the short barrel of my Raging Judge. But in the Browning 1885, potentially, it's got a 28-inch barrel, it'll stabilize the bullet very well, and because it is a single shot breech load, basically, you load it from the back of the barrel and then you close the breech on it, the falling block, and I don't really see there being much of an issue with bullet length, OAL of the cartridge, overall length, and so I can have a bullet that sticks out an inch outside of the cartridge. So if you get what I'm saying, I have a theory that I can take these 300 grain .452 muzzleloading bullets and load them into a 454 Casull cartridge and shoot them out of my single shot rifle. What this will give me as an advantage, and I've got some technical notes here. So my bullet we've gone over, it loses supersonic velocity actually in between 350 and 400 yards. Now, if I translate that and do the math on it, and I use a 300 grain bullet with a .485 ballistic coefficient instead of .233, that bullet fired at the same velocity will not lose its supersonic value until around 700 yards. So it will extend its supersonic velocity out another 350 plus yards. To me, for a handgun round that's going to stay supersonic to 700 yards, that is ultra long range, in my opinion, and that is my premise of this project, and that's what I want to do. I want to try to accomplish. Now, I really don't have a range that I can shoot up 700 yards with, but ballistically, if I can get it to actually prove that this works and it can stay supersonic out to that distance, I don't know. I just want to see if it works. I don't really have a goal other than proving that it works and just testing it out. And because of that, my bullet at, say, its normal velocity, once it reaches 500 yards, its velocity will have dropped from 2,083, which was the average I had before, down to 986 feet per second, and it will have about 637 foot-pounds. Now, at 500 yards, according to some old standards, they said the minimum requirement of energy output to kill, say, a North American white-tailed deer was about 600 foot-pounds. So you could say that this bullet would effectively kill a white-tailed deer at 500 yards. Would you want to take that chance, and would you want to try to make that shot with it? You would have to consider that it's going to drop 137.8 inches at that range. That's if you zeroed at 200 yards. Now, if you go over and recalculate and do the math on these longer, more ballistic coefficient bullets, the 300 grain bullet with a .485 ballistic coefficient at 500 yards, it is still doing 1,371 feet per second, and your bullet drop at that distance has been reduced to 89.6 feet, or sorry, 89.6 inches. My bad, 89.6 inches, which is considerably better. You don't want to be trying to compensate for something that's dropping 140 inches. It would be much easier to compensate for something that's dropping 89 inches, which is 17 MOA. Most rifle scopes out there can accommodate 17 MOA in adjustment for rise. Now, they do have a 325 grain bullet that's got a ballistic coefficient of .522. It actually drops a little bit further and retains a little less velocity. It's pretty close in there. It really only has an advantage out past 700 yards over the 300 grain one. So I really don't feel the need to get into that too much. So there you have it. The ULR 454 Casull project, it's underway. I contacted Pittman Bullets first on this deal. I emailed them, and as expected, kind of expected, you know, they weren't really interested in my project and what I was trying to accomplish. They more or less sent me a generic email explaining that, oh, well, if you're using our bullets for something other than muzzle loading, then, you know, that's on you, liability purposes, blah, blah, blah. I get that. They're a fairly large company. They want to cover their own asses. So I then contacted and emailed Alco Bullets, and cool enough, the guy was like actually interested in my project. He actually told me that he's had other people interested in his bullets for other purposes than muzzle loading, specifically loading like a .45 Raptor, which is actually pretty cool. It's a good idea. You can have a carbine AR-10 rifle that can, have fairly decent range versus having a very, very large amount of energy that's good for, a couple hundred yards, which is basically what the 454 Casull is, the 44 Magnum, the 500 Magnum, the 460. After a couple hundred yards, all of these big, heavy rounds, even though coming out of the barrel, they're coming out stupid fast and they're carrying a stupid amount of energy. At longer distances, like after 200 yards, they really just die off. They just like it just, and then they're just kind of done. And that's just it. They've got the ballistic coefficient of a train car. They're just not aerodynamic. They don't carry the weight very well. They're heavy. They fall fast. Same thing with the 4570. But that's a whole other thing. We're talking about pistol cartridges shooting long range out of rifles that are chambered in pistol cartridges. And so ultra long range, 454 Casull, I would like to be able to extend its effective range before it drops below supersonic speed, before it goes transonic or anywhere in there. I would like to be able to just prove that it is possible to extend that range using a higher ballistic coefficient bullet and extend that range to 700 plus yards. 1,000 yards would be amazing, but through my calculations, I don't think that we're going to get one to stay supersonic out that far. Pressure-wise, what you would have to push the cartridge to inside the chamber, the gun would blow up well before you got the bullet to go fast enough just to keep its velocity high enough that far out. Unless you come up with some super, super long bullet, but then the longer it gets, the heavier it gets, and the slower it goes from the beginning. So you got to find that happy medium, and I really think that 300 grains is probably it. That's probably the sweet spot, and that's what I'm going to go with. So hopefully I got in touch, hopefully in the next week or so, I will be able to start this project. I did get in contact with Alcove Bullets, and they were really interested in it, like I said, and they are sending me some blemished bullets that they have that are more or less, they wouldn't sell them to the public commercially, but they would be glad to let me test some of them to see if they would work in the first place, and then from there, who knows, if it works out well, I'll be glad to be a repeat customer for them for getting my long range bullets. So anyways, I just wanted to really dive into this project with y'all. It's been in the back of my mind, just burning a hole for a few weeks now. And anyways, thank you guys for watching. I hope to see you in the next episode. And if you can, or if you feel the need to, drop a comment below and tell me what you think about the project and what you think about your theories and thoughts on this. I mean, I know there's probably people out there that have more information on reloading than I do. I've only been doing it for a little while, about 10 years-ish, and really, I've only really been into it the past about 3 years. So it's been off and on in there, but the last 3 years I've been really kind of just getting into some reloading and getting into actually shooting and really testing the boundaries of my own ammunition. So if you guys want to leave a comment or have something you want to add to it, maybe some more information that might help me out later, I would be glad. I would love to, read that information and have a conversation with you. Other than that, please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time in the next video. This has been Matthews Ballistics. See ya.